Nestled in the far northwest of England, this is the Lake District. A land defined by its natural beauty. And known to millions who love the lakes was the late Alfred Wainwright, author, guide writer and talented artist. But above all, he was the greatest fell walker. Wainwright's guides have inspired generations of walkers to roam these glorious fells. And now, a century after his birth, it's my turn to go in search of the real Wainwright experience.
From this steady flow of traffic on the A591, you get a clear view of one of Lakeland's most recognisable and famous spots. That is Helm Crag. Today I want to find out why this miniature fell made it into AW's top 6 summits, despite being the only peak that he never got to the very top of.
Situated in the very heart of the Lake District, Helm Crag is one of the lowest summits in Volume 3 of Wainwright's pictorial guides. It sits prominently at the end of a ridge which is easily reached from the village of Grasmere.
It's the cluster of distinctive summit rocks that give Helm Crag its alternative name.
Generations of wagonette and motor coach tourists have been tutored to recognise its appearance in the Grasmere landscape. It is the one feature of their Lakeland tour they hail at sight and in unison. But the cry on their lips is not Helm Crag, but the Lion and the Lamb.
From down here on the roadside, you can see exactly what Wainwright means.
Helm Crag is a modest 1,328 feet. It's a fell walk that's well known for being short and easy. In fact, Wainwright even says if it has a fault, it's that it's too short.
My early evening walk to Helm Crag begins in one of the Lake District's most popular villages, Grasmere. Home to the 18th century poet William Wordsworth and his family, this place inspired 40 years of romantic poetry. The churchyard is today home to the Wordsworth family grave. Before I head off on my walk, I'm meeting Mark Richards, a local writer and broadcaster, who's also one of the few people who knew Alfred Wainwright personally.
See, I'm a bit torn today because I'm not sure if I'm more excited about tackling Helm Crag or chatting to you, because you are actually somebody that has walked with AW. You're rare these days, you know, Mark.
Yeah.
Can't find many of you. How did you come to be introduced to AW in the first place?
Well, I was very fortunate. Back in the early 70s, I got a great passion for drawing, pen and ink drawing, and through a family connection, a family friend sent one of my drawings to him, and he was very encouraging. And over a period of all through the 70s, I came and spent long weekends with him and his wife Betty. It was clear that he was an enigma within the walking world, and it's very much a small world at the time, because he hadn't been exposed to the media at all.
Walking with him, side by side with Alfred Wainwright, how does that work?
Well, certainly you wait until he stops. Even in his more senior years, he had a marvellous stride. I remember going up 9 Standards Rig, and we were repelled by drifts at Faraday Gill. At moments of hiatus, moments like that, he would talk a little bit then.
But you'd wait to be spoken to.
He was sort of a way.
He'd sort of stop and then
talk. But of course, I've always been a bit of an enthusiast, and I probably would have chipped in, and he would have responded.
That was your shared passion, and you're touching a very valuable book. Now, he gave this to you as a gift because it was a gift to him in turn.
Yes, it did. When he left Blackburn, his colleagues at the Treasurer's office went down to the market, the street market, and picked this up, and it embodied so many of the details that later became part and parcel of what he was about. This comes from the time of before the age of photography, when people went on grand tours of the Alps. There's wonderful drawings in here, and the Matterhorn and the Matterhorn there.
I was going to say, when you just see that page, it screams Wainwright, doesn't it?
It does.
Clearly the inspiration, the shading, the style, texture, and the little walk.
And the integration of text and artwork. And right at the beginning, there's this amazing picture. It looks like the Newlands Valley, of course, but there's this Victorian traveller with his Swiss guide, and he's opening up a little guidebook, absolute classic, little wallet book, and it says, Consulting Murray. And you can see A.W. looking at this book and thinking, Consulting Wainwright.
Now, we know that Wainwright never made it to the summit of Helm Crag because he left a space, didn't he, ready to fill, but you have been. You've made it.
I've made it. Well, I learnt my skills mountain craft from a mountaineering club, like a lot of people of my generation. But it is an interesting little climb, and it's something that you'll enjoy, I'm sure.
Do you call the summit Helm Crag or the Lion and the Lamb?
I call it Helm Crag, because that's the name of the whole fell itself, and one tends to do that.
You can't actually see the final summit from here, can you? It's sort of just around the bend a bit.
It's a sneaky one. This is the Grasmere Lion and the Lamb you're looking at, and I suppose this is what Wainwright would describe as the official Lion and the Lamb, but to my mind it's the Howitzers, the real summit, and that's the view you get from Dunmail Raise. It's an amazing place to be. What more could you ask for?
Nothing at all. Mark, thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure.
It's been a delight to see you.
Hold on to that book.
I will. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
As I head off to begin my walk, let's take a look at the route ahead. My walk begins in the heart of Grasmere village. The footpath takes me away from the tourist crowds and towards the western side of the fell. Here my route takes me across the National Trust estate at Allenbank. I'll head along the tarmacked Easdale Road before heading into the woodland at the foot of Helm Crag. The engineered rocky stairway snakes its way up the breast of the fell, passing by Langcrig Crag, Jackdaw Crag and White Crag. From the path there's a view across Easdale Beck to Easdale Tarn and the spectacular waterfall of Sourmilk Gill. But as my path hairpins to the right, I'll climb onto a ridge that gives me a view into the opposite valley, looking towards the pass of Dunmail Raise and the peak of Fairfield. Here the final ascent leads to the summit ridge path. First, I'll approach the distinctive rocks that form the Lion and the Lamb, and then cross the boulder-strewn, craggy and desolate ridgetop to reach the cannon-shaped barrel of rock, the Howitzer, which is the mountain's true top.
Dove Cottage is Wordsworth's most famous home, which now houses the Wordsworth Museum. But perhaps a lesser-known house is that one, Through the Trees. That's Allenbank, where he lived with his wife Mary, their 5 children, and his poet friend Samuel Coleridge between 1808 and 1811.
In 1917, this impressive house was to have another important owner. It was purchased by Canon Hardwick Rawnsley, the co-founder of the National Trust, who retired here. When he died in 1920, he left the estate to the Trust, who still manage it today. I can see the summit, but first on this route, there's a fair bit of low-level walking to do before I reach the foot of the fell.
In book 3, there's a tiny diagram which shows Helm Crag in relation to Grasmere, and Wainwright says this is the smallest and most accurate map in the book. What we also know, it's the smallest map in any of Wainwright's pictorial guides, and I think it's the smallest map I've ever seen. It's the size of a stamp. Ordinarily, this would be a pretty late start for a walk. However, in this case, Wainwright recommends it. For the evening of the day of arrival in Grasmere on a walking holiday, it's just the thing. An epitome of Lakeland concentrated in the space of 2 hours, and an excellent foretaste of happy days to come. Now this way is towards Easdale Tarn and the spectacular waterfall Sour Milk Gill. The thing about this walk is that it gives you access to so many beautiful spots that at the height of the season it can get really busy.
A short detour from the route to Helm Crag takes you across the valley to Easdale Tarn, from where you have a fine view back to Helm Crag's profile.
The thing about a low-level walk like this is that you really get the time to just soak in the atmosphere and enjoy a bit of the magic.
That house over there at the foot of Helm Crag is Lent Crag, and that's where the Lakeland poets used to meet and socialise. And it's easy to see how their creative juices would have been set off by this. As Wainwright did with his guides, Wordsworth immortalised the beauty of the lakes in his poetry. He was often seen wandering in this valley and surrounding fells, dictating his poetry to his sister Dorothy.
Starts to get a bit interesting here, and the canopy of trees blocks out all the light. Helm Crag, that way. Last chance to visit Easdale Tarn, that way.
The route to Helm Crag also features in Wainwright's 192-mile coast-to-coast walk, from St Bees Head in the west, crossing 3 national parks along the way, to Robin Hood's Bay in the east, making this a well-trodden route.
This is one of the few hills where ascent and descent by the same route is recommended. An alternative route has nothing in its favour.
Suddenly it's not so gentle, but thankfully somebody's put a handrail up.
The footpath is slightly altered from the route in Volume 3, as this path has been pitched and repaired by the National Trust. Now, although it's unlikely you'll go astray, it's a good reminder that you should carry an Ordnance Survey map, as the guidebook is nearing 50 years old.
When Wainwright started walking, of course, the OS maps were drawn to a much smaller scale, so the detail wouldn't have been there. I mean, Helm Crag would have looked just like a little blob.
The new scale of the OS maps doubled, liberating Wainwright's work.
They fascinated me. The 1-inch maps we had to be content with before suffered from an absence of detail. They were magnificent maps, magnificently drawn and magnificently accurate. But on the rough country of Lakeland, where summits and crags and tarns and streams were bewilderingly crowded in small compass, and where the ground was so steeply sculptured that the contours almost touched, there was simply not room on the 1-inch maps to show every feature that a walker would encounter on his travels.
And that, winking at us over there, is Sour Milk Gill.
Fed from the waters of Easdale Tarn is the spectacular waterfall Sour Milk Gill. It gets its name from its foaming waters, which resemble milk when it's being churned into butter. At just under 1,300 feet and only 1.5 miles in distance, this fell is deceptively steep. This is starting to feel like a more serious walk.
What a splendid view of Grasmere. Now, the lake is to the south of the village, and there are some beautiful gentle walks around the water. But if you fancy some of the tougher challenges that the Lake District has to offer, then Grasmere is perfectly situated to tackle Helvellyn, the Langdale Pikes, and the Scaffells.
The 214 fells included in the series of pictorial guides are commonly known as the Wainwrights. These range in height from the diminutive 985 feet at Castle Crag to the towering 3,210 feet of Scafell Pike. Completing all the fells is a popular peak bagging challenge. Jonathan Broad is among an elite group of youngsters who've bagged all 214 Wainwrights before their 10th birthday.
Good to meet you. How are you?
Fine.
Good, good. Now, an extraordinary thing you've done to get through all of those fells before your 10th birthday. Did you set out to try and do that? Is that what you wanted to do?
Yeah.
How did you first come across a Wainwright book?
Well, my dad sort of asked me to do the Wainwrights, and then my mum started buying the Wainwright books for my dad, and then I started to look at them.
Well, I mean, I'm so far behind you. You've done 214 of them. I've done just a handful. What are some of your favourites?
Helm Crag.
So where we are right now?
Yeah.
Why? What do you love so much about Helm Crag? Because it's a miniature fell.
Well, I like looking at from that road down there, looking at the Lion and the Lamb, and climbing on top of it.
What would you do next if you could do another one again and again and again? Which one would it be that you really enjoyed the journey on?
Probably this one, Helm Crag.
Probably this one again?
Yeah.
How many fells have you walked in one day?
12 at the most.
12? Blimey, that's a lot.
It was 18 miles as well.
Whew, I don't know if I could keep up with you. Now, have you ever done any camping outside, bivouacking?
Yeah, because we had to do loads of fells and we didn't think that we could do them in time, so we just camped out at night and waited till morning and got up at 4 in the morning to do them.
You're a very dedicated fell walker, Jonathan. Can you remember a time when you started on a walk and it was a lovely sunny day and then it turned into a horrible rainy day?
Yeah, because we started on this walk where we did 3 fells, and when we got to the, well, it was sort of sunny at the start, and then when we got near the end at High Spire, it was really windy and wet and cold.
Were you all prepared? Did you have everything you needed to have with you?
Yep.
What do you pack normally with you when you're going?
Well, a whistle, a map, a coat, and food.
That's pretty good. So how long do you think you could survive out on a fell for?
Probably about 2 days, maybe.
Blimey. Now, have you got any tips for me? Because you've done all 214 fells. I'm a long way behind you, so I've got quite a lot to learn, I think.
Well, really, you need to have all your stuff ready for when it gets bad weather and just keep going.
So just keep going.
Yeah, even if it's really bad weather. But I suppose if it's thunder and lightning, then you should come back to be safe.
So what future plans have you got, Jonathan? What's next for you?
Well, my dad was talking about doing the Pennine Way,
Yeah.
and we might do it in years. And once he actually talked about doing Kilimanjaro in Africa when I'm about 20.
When you're about, so a little wait to go.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to try and make my way right up to the top.
Okay.
See if we can do what Wainwright didn't do. See ya.
Bye, Julia.
The final stretch to the summit gets a bit stonier underfoot, but that's always a good sign. Means you're nearly there. Wainwright said the hills are not death traps. You don't go on the hills to break your neck. You go on the hills to get away from places where other people can break your neck. And now you can see what Wainwright made such a fuss about.
The summit is altogether a rather weird and fantastic place. Well worth not merely a visit, but a detailed and leisurely exploration.
Well, this is the Lion and the Lamb, but from such close proximity, you actually can't make it out at all. There's the A591. And now I'm one of those little ants that you can see from down there, scuttling along the rocky profile. Although this is a short walk and a low fell by Lakeland standards, it does make it into Wainwright's top 6 summits. And when you look across that ridge towards the other pinnacle of rock, you can see why.
The ridge path is a joy to tread and leads majestically to the main summit outcrop, a tilted, jagged mass of rock which will draw a camera from many back.
There is an alternative, easier path down to the left. That would be cheating. But this is a good path to obey Wainwright's golden rule of watching your feet. He describes it as boulder strewn, and it's certainly a good route to twist an ankle. That jagged mass of rock on the north of the summit is known as the Howitzer, and that's really the mountain's true top.
As I approach the Howitzer, the looming top looks to be about 30 feet above the path, and perhaps is a trickier proposition than I first imagined.
Now it's time to see for myself how difficult that final scramble up to the top really is. Because of course AW never actually made it up there. Although of course he was considerably older than I am when he tried.
The virtues of Helm Crag have not been lauded enough. It gives an exhilarating little climb, a brief essay in real mountaineering, and in a region where all is beautiful, it makes a notable contribution to the natural charms and attractions of Grasmere.
This is one of the very few summits in Lakeland reached only by climbing rocks. Wainwright described it as one of the very best.
In scenic values, the summits of many high mountains are a disappointment after the long toil of ascent. Yet here, on top of Little Helm Crag, a midget of a mountain, is a remarkable array of rocks, upstanding and fallen, of singular interest and fascinating appearance, that yield a quality of reward out of all proportion to the short and simple climb.
The uppermost inches of Scawfell and Helvellyn and Skiddaw can show nothing like Helm Crag's crown of shattered and petrified stone.
The whole feel of this walk from Grasmere to Helm Crag summit is completely different from my other walks. Here, the low-level journey to the foot of the fell makes a significant and enjoyable part of the route. The steep but relatively short hike up the fellside may deliver amazing views, but as Wainwright clearly realised, it's the rocky and desolate summit with its stark contrast to the valley below that delivers the walker the most inspiration and reward.
Wainwright left a little corner in Book 3 in the Helm Crag section, reserved for an announcement that the author had succeeded in surmounting the highest point, which of course he never did. Sitting in this evening light on the summit of Helm Crag, it's easy to see how this miniature fell winged its way into Wainwright's affections. And having struggled to the top of this pinnacle of rock, I can tell you it's not as easy as it looks from down there in Grasmere. I think we can forgive AW for not making it to the very, very top. A small fell with a tricky proposition.